What lessons can be learned from October 7th and other tragedies that have happened throughout history? Check out this clip from Douglas Murray, who talks about this in this particular clip on the Trigonometry podcast. So let's watch this clip together and then talk about it. But before you do, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
What do we all learn from what is going on, what has happened, what the reaction has been? What are we missing? What should we think about as a result of all of this?
I'm always loath to back up a moment, but sometimes people say about the Holocaust, what lessons do we learn from the Holocaust? And there's this terrible presumption in that, which is the Holocaust happened in order to educate us better about something, like to morally improve us.
That's not what I mean.
No, I know. I'm just saying, I know. Yeah. But I'm saying that I'm instinctively, as a result, sort of wary of like, what are the lessons?
My point is this: you are talking about the West, right? Mm-hmm. And Israel, you might say, is an outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East, but it's not the entire West.
No.
And it seems to me that people who are battling these evil terrorists, which is what they are, have something to teach us.
Yeah, no, look,
and you've written about the generation of young people in Israel and how it contrasts with us here in Europe and in America to a lesser extent. That's what I'm asking about.
No, you're quite right. I'm just sort of sensitive about
Don't put me in a bucket with Owen Jones. I don't belong there.
Absolutely not. God forbid. No, I mean, I only say because, yes, there is just always a tendency to do what I was just resisting, but you're right. I mean, there are lessons about the response, which I think can definitely be learned. I mean, part of the purpose of this book is not just to give my first-hand accounts of the war and testimony and so on, but to say, to basically ask what is there in this, so that we can extrapolate out, potentially learn something from. And the really strong feeling I have had for the last year and a half is that there's this very moving thing which I believe that we, if I can say so, probably all to some degree have, which I think everybody in America, Britain, the West broadly has, which is that we've all been brought up in the embers of the last bits of exhaust fumes from World War II. Mm-hmm. And as everybody knows in the publishing industry, if you publish a book on Pol Pot, it's not as popular as if you publish a book about Hitler. Why? Well, because we're still trying to work out that much more, and it's been much closer to home. And if you want to stir people up in a good way, you will talk about the greatest generation, and that's absolutely right. But it's always been interesting to me, that accepted, inevitable part of the background of the society that we live in. We are surrounded by the memorials to the dead and the fallen, and the memorials to the heroes, and we grow up on stories of them. And that's absolutely right. But as this recedes into history, as the Second World War recedes into history, there is this ever sort of present question, which is, what would we do if that was to happen to us in our generation? And I've always found it an interesting question, because it sort of haunts people, and it should, and it makes us feel inadequate, and it should. And there's a healthy response to it, an attitude towards it, and there's there's a set of unhealthy ones as well. But one of the things that really has inspired me in the last year and a half has been that for Israel, that question has been answered, because you see, all of the things we say about the young generation in Britain or America, you do all these polls, and we all comment on them. You see these polls that come out saying, if you're British and you're 18 to 40, which is, the age group that fought in World Wars I and II, that age group in the UK, would you be willing to fight for your country? And, you see these polls, and I mean, they all have bewildering replies, like what was a recent one? The fact like the vast majority of people in Britain, young people, said they wouldn't fight for their country, even in an existential conflict. By the way, there was one recently that said, I think 10% of young people said that they couldn't because they were looking after someone.
I thought you were going to say 10% couldn't because they've got ADHD.
Can you imagine? Like, no, I'd like to fight for my country's survival.
I'd like to shoot the German, but look.
But I am looking after my nan.
Because your nan is going to be fine once the evil hordes have gone over your society.
Anyway, I mean, there's also bewildering stuff like this has come up in recent years. When the war in Ukraine started, when the Russian invasion, there was polls of American people of fighting age, also found, wouldn't be willing to fight for their country, would flee, and all that sort of things. I mean, it's all bewildering, and of course, there's this thing of like, actually, what do those polls mean? America hasn't had a land invasion, since the founding. I mean, it's it's inconceivable to an average American that the Vladimir Putin's army would land in California and start fighting, and it's the same with young Brits and Western Europeans and so on. It gets a little different the further east you go in Europe now. But all that stuff is inconceivable. There's a long-winded way to just say that the interesting thing is that the same doubts existed in Israel until the 7th. The young Israelis were thought very often by their elders, people who fought after the invasions by the Arabs in 67 and 73. There was this perception that the young Israelis were weak, were just wanted to party in Tel Aviv. They just wanted to be on Instagram and TikTok and all these sort of things. And then that proved to be flat out wrong. And in the last year and a bit, when I've been embedded with the IDF in Gaza and Lebanon and elsewhere, I've been just enormously inspired by them. This will sound bewildering to some people listening who have read totally false information about what these soldiers do, but their homeland was attacked, their families were attacked, their relatives and friends were murdered and slaughtered, and 250 taken hostage by the terrorists. Which, if you extrapolate that number out to America in terms of population, would be 10,000 Americans being taken hostage in one day. So this happened to their people, to their family, their friends, their nation, their country. And the reservists who were called up, the over request of soldiers to return to service, there was 130% re-enlistment rates after the 7th. People I record in the book flying back from around the world, from holiday or anything like, just getting on the first plane, getting back and, being in uniform within 48 hours. Just story after story of young men and women who just rushed to the front and spent, in some of their cases, the next year fighting, and in really terrible circumstances, but with amazing results. And I think, for me, it's been unbelievably inspiring to see them at work, because this is a demonstration that even a generation that is thought to be weak can show its mettle at the moment of trial. And I think, when I look at the people in the West, and obviously this is one of the things that the book is about, is when I look at the people in the West of their age, what the hell are you doing? I've seen young female soldiers, 19, 20, and remarkable young people. And I sort of think, do you know that your contemporaries in New York are busily eating Oreo cookies in a tent in the middle of some godforsaken campus and being educated into idiocy? And they are ignoramuses, and you're a person. You're a real person and a hero. And I suppose there's a sort of one of the questions in the book is like, who do you want to admire? Who do you want to turn to? The person who wants to cosplay being Hamas in Colombia, or a young man of 19 who manages to kill Sinwar.
Maybe one of the other lessons that can be learned from October 7th and the repercussions, the skyrocketing of anti-Semitism and support for Hamas around the world, was this idea that you're always a Jew, that no matter what you believe, no matter what you practice, you'll always be a Jew. You'll always be looked upon as a Jew as well. You'll always be treated as a Jew when push comes to shove as well. You think about Germany in the 1930s, where people, if you were a completely assimilated Jewish atheist, completely assimilated into German culture, you would think that nothing's going to ever happen to you because you're just one of them. You're a German atheist. If you had a Jewish atheist and a German atheist standing next to each other on a street corner, on all surface levels, you'd never be able to tell the difference between them. They look the same, they act the same, culturally the same, they believe the same things. They're all the same at the end of the day on all external appearances. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, always be a Jew. And this is, I think, something that in some of the areas that were attacked on October 7th as well, you had some of the people that were the most liberally minded, the most open-minded about two-state solution, peace and love, and everything like that. And at the end of the day, that's not going to save you, because as long as you're a Jew, you'll always be treated by a Jew, by the enemies of the Jewish people. You'll always look past. Doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter how you act, doesn't matter anything else. If you're a Jew, the enemies of the Jewish people will always regard you as such. And I think Jews in America and across the West found this out as well, where people felt very comfortable in their either European or American schools or just daily living. And then after an event like October 7th happens and the people feel emboldened, the haters of the Jews feel emboldened and are more vocal and whatnot, all of a sudden you look around, the comfort that you thought that you had, the place that you had them, isn't so comfortable anymore, because at the end of the day, you'll always be a Jew. Again, you could be, in your mind, completely assimilated, completely like the surrounding culture, but at the end of the day, you'll always be a Jew. A lot of people say to themselves, I am a Jew and I'm proud to be a Jew and I'll die as a Jew. And that's all fine and good, but perhaps in our daily lives, one outcome, rather than just thinking about having to die as a Jew and being proud of being Jewish in the face of anti-Semitism, right? Rather than being an anti-Semite, right? What about embracing Judaism in a real way, embracing your heritage in a real way, doing another mitzvah, doing something outwardly that expresses that internal connection that can never be taken away from us? Just some food for thought, perhaps. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there on the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.